Welcome to Module 2. I'm Reitzel-Bowker. Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad that you have joined me back in Module 2 of our Introduction to Sketchup class. I also hope that you enjoyed practicing some of the commands, the navigation tools and drawing tools that we learned last week in Module 1. Those will be very useful in helping us to build upon what we will be learning today, which are our Sketchup tools menu. Very exciting lesson today. To get started, we're going to go ahead and move forward in our PDF document, and I want you to look for the page that says 3D Warehouse. And that will help us to practice all of the additional commands that we're going to learn today. And so I'll point that out for you right now. It is about 2 items, say, right of the Zoom menu, and it looks like a box with a red SketchUp symbol inside of it, and it is called the 3D Warehouse. Now, what this is a worldwide web of items that you can download. Models, houses, chairs, goodness, anything. People will be on there, and it's just basically models that people make all around the world with their accounts that they have, and they upload these models to this sharing site that we greatly benefit from as we design things in our model. To me, it's like a staging store, so I quite enjoy it. One thing that's important to know, though, that when we click on this button, is it will need for you to be logged in. You'll notice here that I am logged in on the right-hand side. And if you're not logged in, it will ask you to sign in and or create a Trimble account. You're safe to do that. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and create that Trimble account so that you have a login and you can follow along for the rest of this lesson. Now I'm going to go ahead and type the word chair in our search window here. And you'll notice there's a few options here. We have products that are available, specific products, quite often to spec. You can see the companies that they come from. We have models, which is just basically anything that people have made and uploaded under the category of chair. Different chair collections that you can download. Awesome. And a variety of chair catalogs, again, to spec. So if you're a designer and I spent years in corporate office design, this is incredibly useful because the chair that you're specifying, you can precisely download and get into your model. How great is that? Okay, let's click on models. And I just want to get a chair that I can work with that won't be too large, kind of simplistic. I'm open to you guys choosing whatever it is you want. Totally fine. I think this one right here would work for me quite well. Looks like a simple chair. It's not too large of a file. As you can see, the file size on the bottom right-hand side. And we're going to go ahead and click download. So that little arrow on the bottom right is your download button. Now, when it asks you if you would like to load this directly into your SketchUp model, you're going to say yes. And we wait for it. Nothing happens immediately depending on how large the file is. And you can see as I move my mouse now, it's attached to the chair and it basically is asking me where do you want to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and click it close to my source point here. I think this chair is a little bit drawn out of scale. That's a little sign right there. It's bigger than my person, but we can work with this with all of the new commands that we're going to be learning today. So we do need to be careful that the objects you bring in are to the correct scale. Most of them are, but every now and again people draw things without drawing it to scale. Now what I do want to point out in this is if we click on the gray space outside of the object in our SketchUp land, then the object will look the way that it will look. But if we click on the object itself, we get this really interesting blue box around it. That box has joined all of the lines and surfaces together so that it is kind of one unit. So when I want to do something to it, like move it or rotate it or whatever, copy paste it, I'm not going to lose a face or a line or a surface. It's basically write protected, and it's quite useful when I want to do other things to this object. The other little note to write down, if you're taking notes on this lesson, is that SketchUp is such that every single face or edge, when touching another face or edge, unifies, becomes one, connects, gets glued to other surfaces. So you have to be really careful, because if I build a chair and then don't create a group out of it, but I move it into a house and attach it to a floor, that chair and that floor are now glued together. And when I want to go move that chair later, the floor picks up and moves with it, which is a horrible realization and one that I've experienced too many times, I must admit. So we do want to make sure that the furniture that we have is grouped together. That's very, very useful. There are two ways to do that, which we're going to learn in today's lesson. There are items in Sketchup called components. That's what this chair is. Every model you bring in from the 3D warehouse is a component by nature. Just in terms of uploading it, it becomes a component when you insert it. A component then, when I make a copy of it, creates basically a twin object to the original. And so when I change one component, I will be changing the other. And that can be quite useful because I probably, if I meant to change this chair's color, it would change all of them, and that can be very handy. A group is different than a component in that it doesn't change the original when it changes the copy. And so it's a way to group objects without actually creating a situation whereby one object is basically a clone of the other. It keeps them separate, and there's a variety of other reasons we use that later on in more advanced SketchUp classes for gaming and so forth. But they're both good ways to group out an object. Okay, now that we have a chair in our model, we're going to learn the first command of the day, one of our tools commands, which is the move command. So if you are taking notes, I want you to write down the word move. And I also want us to start out just by drawing like a rectangle on the ground. Let's make it a little bit fun. Why don't we paint it with some wood or something? And so we have a floor, okay? Notice that our floor is basically a surface and a variety of edges, and so it's therefore not a group or a component. So when we bring the chair onto the floor, we want the chair to be a group. One of them should be a group because we don't want them to connect together. Now the move command is found right here where I'm hovering. It is 2 to the right of our push-pull command, and the order of the command goes like this. Step 1 is we select the object that we wish to move. That seems like a simple thing, but you would be surprised when you think you've selected your object and some other chair goes flying across the room as you realize you've got another object selected. Stay tuned, that will happen to you. So we're going to select this chair. We're going to then launch the move command, which can be happen by clicking on that shortcut or by pressing the letter M, or it can also be found under the tools menu. Okay, so any of those ways will kind of launch that move command. Now you'll notice that if I literally just click on the chair right there and click another spot, it's just very easy to move an object just by clicking anywhere. Boom, 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 boom. We can put it wherever. But here's the thing. Here's the key. If I just think it looks right, I'm like, okay, that looks really great. It's sitting on the edge of that floor. And then I orbit. Boy, oh boy, you sure can have the problem of having a lot of flying chairs in SketchUp because what looks right may not be right because of our perspective. So here's my advice to you. When you're moving an object, make sure that when you pick it, before you click it, you're clicking it on a spot of the chair that will be relevant to you and that will attach to the thing you want it to attach to. So you'll notice I'm going to find the end point of this chair, and SketchUp does have a variety of snap points that it tries to connect things to, which is very, very useful. So I think I'm going to use this endpoint of the actual group, and I'm going to click there. And then I'm going to hover my mouse over the floor. I'll even orbit a little just to see. Kind of hover over the floor. And I'm going to wait till SketchUp tells me that that corner is on the face of the floor. Click. That is the first step you want to do when you move an object. You want to make sure that it goes onto the face you intend it to go to so that then you can kind of work with it from that point forward. Now at this point when you want to move the object, I can move it on green. I can move it on red. Whoops, it's on red, then we know it's on axis. Don't make sure that line's not black. Move it on red. Move it on green. I could even move it on blue if I wanted straight up, although I don't want it to float in the air. And that would be a way to actually move it around the space. I always say in my face-to-face lessons, it's like the game Frogger. I'm really aging myself in this lesson today. Okay? Now the other benefit of moving it on the axis like that is that I can click the chair and hover it on red, and then I can type the distance that I wish to move it. So if I wish to move it exactly 5 feet to the right, I'll go ahead and type 5 feet. If I wish to move it 5 feet on the green axis, then I will click, hover, and type 5 feet, which will enable my chair to move exactly that distance and on that axis. Next, we're going to try the copy and paste command within SketchUp. Now, most of us know that when we select an object and then press the Control-C keys on our keyboard and then simply click on Control-V, that's a really easy way in SketchUp or a variety of software to copy and paste an object. In the same way, we can type Control-Z, which will undo something, all right? So go ahead and try Control-C on the chair, Control-V to paste the chair, and then you might even just go Control-V again to paste another chair. That is the easiest way to copy and paste a chair. For those of you who aren't used to doing that, the old-fashioned way, if you will, is to select an object and to go Edit, Copy. Don't feel bad about being old-fashioned. I support it. And edit, paste. Simple as that. Okay, so that is kind of that more traditional way, we'll say, to copy and paste an object. And so we have 4 of them now. Now, here's the thing I really want to show you that's quite useful. What if, for example, I knew I wanted another chair, right? But I didn't want it to be, see how these chairs are not like lined up? When I pasted them, they kind of went where they went. Well, I use this one a lot. It's called Paste in Place. And so I will choose the chair and choose Control-C, which makes a copy of the chair, okay? Goes to the clipboard, really. And then I will go to the Edit drop-down menu and choose Paste in Place. What that did is it put a chair exactly on top of the original chair. So there's 2 chairs sitting there. What I will do now is I'll launch the Move command and very carefully begin to move the chair along the red axis, which guarantees for me that those 2 chairs will be lined up. So let's put it 7 feet away from the original chair. There you go. So now I have 2 chairs, one which is a copy of the other, perfectly lined up because I used the Paste in Place option. Next, we're going to learn how to use the Scale command. The Scale command, and actually all of these commands, do exactly what they promise to do, which is very cool. The Scale command can be launched by typing the word S, which I just did right there, or you will also find it under the Tools menu as well. You will see the word Scale. There's also a symbol right here that looks like a box that's about to be enlarged, okay? And it sits right beside the Rotate tool, which we're going to learn about next. Now, as soon as I launch the Scale command, you'll notice that in this 3-dimensional world that we are in, it wants to know which part of this object you wish to scale. So I'm going to explain a few things here. If I choose one of the outer grips, okay, one of the corner outer grips, you'll notice it says that this is a uniform scale. And that means that the chair itself stays exactly in its same it's kind of that uniform scale. It doesn't change its overall proportion. That was the word I was looking for. It just basically stays the same. It just gets smaller or bigger. Now, as I'm moving this object up or down, you'll see in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, it's telling you the scale factor of the object. I'm going to explain this. 1 is 100%. Anything larger than 1 will make the object bigger. If you want the object to be twice as big, for example, you would type the number 2. Anything smaller than 1 makes the object smaller, all the way down to 0, which would be a fraction of its original size. So if I wish to make this object half as big, type 0.5. If I want to make this object 3 times as large, type scale factor of 3. Okay? The same process applies for all of these commands. It is click, hover, type. And there we have it. Now, the other grips give you other opportunities to change the object and perhaps even make it unrecognizable or into something new. So if I want to make the object the same height, same depth, but just wider, then I can edit that by rescaling just that middle grip on the width side and type the number 2, which I typed W2. Type the number 2, which will make the object twice as wide. I can do the same thing along the front to make it deeper. I can do the same thing for the height to make it just taller while it maintains the other two proportions. And that is also a very, very useful one. Now there is another middle grip that I will tell you honestly I never use because it's hard to remember which two it adjusts. So this one will actually change the red value and the blue value. Makes it taller and wider, but not deeper. This one makes it deeper and taller, but not wider. So I find I don't use that as much, but feel free to try that as well to see if that would be of any use to you. But here's the fun one. Scale is the command that you use in order to mirror an object. There's no other mirror command in SketchUp. It's scale. And I need you to remember that. So in order to mirror something, we basically want to take the very middle grip, depending on which direction you wish to mirror it. Let's mirror it left and right. And you begin to hover to make it smaller, and then you basically keep going and you pop it right out the other side. It's oddly satisfying. And the mirror scale factor number is -1. In other words, keep it at 100%, but make it a negative value of what it is in its original state. Okay, so play around with the scale factor and see if you can turn a variety of objects into a whole bunch of new objects. Let's take a look now at the rotate command. The rotate command at the top of your screen looks like two curved arrows that form a circle that allow you to rotate an object. Very necessary, certainly in interiors and in architecture, and also just, gosh, you could do it for rotate a variety of materials or for industrial design, whatever you need. Now, the process remains the same. The process to select the object and then select the tool and then begin to launch the tool is always the order in which you go. So just make a note of that. It's never select the tool first. It's always select the object first. Now, when I select the rotate command, you'll notice that a protractor tries to attach itself to a variety of faces. It wants to know kind of which axis do you want to rotate your object on. And so the one we use most often is the blue axis, and that will basically appear as soon as you touch the face of the floor. Now, if I had a, sort of a straight, let's see, why don't I create one here? If I had a wall surface somewhere in my drawing, it is possible to rotate an object on the green axis or the red axis. And you can see that the green axis would kind of cartwheel the object, and the red axis would basically somersault the object. Okay, you can see how that would work right there. So that's not very common. We don't do that a whole lot, although we do tend to do it by mistake. So just hit escape if you ever get stuck doing something you're not meaning to do. Escape is your key to get right out of there and stop doing that, okay? Now, we're going to launch rotate. We're going to go to the blue axis, and this is how the process works. It's looking for an edge on which it can rotate. So we're going to click somewhere on the floor, the left side of the edge that we wish to create, and then we're going to line that up on the red axis to finish off that edge of the chair, and we're going to click a second time. After that second click, once we start to move our mouse, the chair will begin to rotate. What appears for us in the measurements area is the angle that we wish to rotate our chair. So I'm going to type 45. And now I have a chair that was rotated to a 45-degree angle. Let's try that again. Choose one of the chairs, choose the rotate command, finish the edge that you want to rotate on, begin to turn, type an angle, 90, enter, and the rotation command is complete. Next, we're going to learn one of my favorite tools, and that is the offset tool, which is very, very useful in design in general because it's how I actually create walls in any space, okay? So what we're going to do is a little bit of practice here is we're going to draw using our pencil, see what we can remember from last week. I'm going to use our pencil tool, and I'd like you to hover on the green axis, type 20 feet, hover on the red axis, type 20 feet, and green, 20 feet, red, 20 feet. I'm going to show you something as I come back down to finish my drawing. Before I type 40 feet, let's say I didn't know what that distance is because it wasn't easy math. I'm going to show you how to kind of infer. if I just go visit my starting point, hover over it, Sketchup will give me a guideline. That's called inference in Sketchup, and it helps me to line up where that line needs to be so that I can finish off my floor right there. Now here's a little note to make. If I was drawing a house, a space, a room, I always start out with my floor. Okay, that's just something that I do. It's not the same for everyone, but whether you're drafting or whether you're modeling in 3D, I find it most useful to start with the floor surface that you're working with, which will help us to use the offset command. Okay, the offset command can be found in under the tools menu. The shortcut for that is F. So if you're someone that's enjoying typing these letters, go ahead and type the letter F. As soon as you do that, the software will sort of choose whatever surface you're near, okay? And because I'm hovering over this floor surface, it's looking for an edge that it can offset, and it will find all of the boundary edges for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the middle space and release really quickly. So ready, here I go. Click and release. And you'll notice that it's making a copy of that perimeter, and it wants to know how far in or out it would like us to copy that shape. So let's go to the inside and type 6, enter, which is 6 inches. Okay, that's really cool because now we've basically subdivided this original floor shape into 2 shapes, one on the outer side, which is like walls, and one on the inside. So now if I take that wall perimeter shape, I can push-pull it 10 feet up. Really useful. Let's try that one more time to the side. Keep that space off to the side. We're going to use it for the next command. But if I'm to draw and just basically draw any rectangle and practice my offset command by typing the letter F, hovering on the inside, type the number 8, and I've done it again. I'm sure some of you said along the way, Sherry, is there a way that I could measure the length of something to make sure that I got it correct? The answer is yes. Yes, there is. In fact, the tape measure tool here does a variety of things that are very useful to us in SketchUp. Measuring is one of those things. So let's go ahead and click that tape measure tool. And if you are unsure about the distance of something, you're like, is that wall really 6? Did I really make it 6? You can basically click on a corner or an edge or a face, anywhere really, and then begin to hover. And as you hover, it's going to tell you the distance of those areas. You could even go on an angle here. How big is that? Right? 10 feet tall. And we have 19 feet wide. And so I'm constantly launching the tape measure tool in order to measure the accuracy of my drawing. And sometimes when I get it wrong, I'm like, shoot, that was supposed to be 20 feet. Well, then I'll just move this a foot by push-pulling it, not moving it, push-pulling it, and push-pull this a foot in order to push-pull my way into accuracy. And I do that from understanding the dimension through the tape measure. Very, very useful. Okay. The second reason we would use the tape measure, if we come back to our chairs here, is if we want to rescale an object to a known dimension. So what am I talking about? What if I know, there's no way I could figure out the scale factor on this chair, because how could I possibly do that? Let's say I bring in a chair and it's 3 foot 6 and 1/8 of an inch, and I need it to be 24 inches. Well, that's where the tape measure tool comes in. The first step in launching this is to double click inside of the object, okay? Which we haven't really talked about today much, but it's the only way to really edit a group or component is to get inside of the box, okay? That's the only way to paint the surfaces of those and so forth. So this chair, for example, if I want to get inside of it because I want to repaint it or I want to rescale it or something, I simply either double click on the chair or I can right click on the chair and choose Edit Component. And now I'm inside. You can tell because everything else goes gray. Now this would be an opportunity for me to then paint the chair. And if it doesn't repaint the first time, I have to just double clicking until I'm far enough inside that I can actually repaint that object, as you can see there. That's the only way to do it. Okay, I just wanted to touch on that quickly. But the other thing we do when we go inside of a group is we can rescale it using the tape measure. So let's say I know from this corner of the chair to this corner of the chair must be 2 feet. Okay, process is this. Double click on the object or hit edit component by right clicking on the object. Click one side of the chair, click the other side of the chair, and then type the new distance, 24, enter. The warning message that you will get is, do you want to resize the active group or component? Yes, thank you, I do. So you can go ahead and say yes to that. And you'll notice that every one of those components changed to make sure that that was more to scale. That chair is now 24 inches wide because I scaled it using tape measure by double clicking inside and using it. Now, here's the thing most people forget. When they're rescaling an object using tape measure, they forget to double click inside the object. And here's what happens if you forget that step. They go ahead, they use their tape measure, they put in a new distance, and the warning message that appears is, do you want to resize the model? It doesn't say the active group or component, it says the model. Your answer is no, that was a mistake. I do not want to resize the model. Because if you're resizing the model, you're basically resizing all of the architecture work, all of the work that you did according to this chair's dimension. And let me tell you a small story. I did that one time by accident, and I was modeling a house that was intended to be built and then walk through the house in virtual reality. And so I was so excited. It was the first time I ever did this. I put on my VR glasses, and as I walked through the house, it was dollhouse sized. So I had gone ahead and made that mistake. I was basically kind of crawling through the house on my knees, which was kind of funny. But anyway, so lesson learned, make sure that you do not resize the model. Rather, you go whoops, and you go back out, back into the chair, and do it separately in this way where you're inside of the chair, you put a new dimension in, and you resize the active group or component. And that's how you use tape measure to rescale an object to a known distance. Okay? All right, let's go over to the walls that we built, and we're going to find out how to use the tape measure in a third and very useful way. Tape measure, as you see, has been drawing these little guidelines for us. We get these dash, you might be saying, why do I have dashed lines all over my screen? Well, those are meant to be very useful for you. They're called guidelines in Sketchup, and I use them all the time for designing, window openings or door openings, or when I need to know the distance of something and I don't want to draw a line. Now what you do here, let's say I have a window that I need to place 3 feet from that edge. So I'm going to go ahead and use the tape measure tool from the edge. Use the edge, not the corner, okay? Corner's not good. We want to use the edge here. And I'm going to click on the edge of the wall, and I'm going to hover on the red axis and type 3 feet. That will give me a guideline that I can start my window from, okay? And let's say my window was had a 4-foot windowsill. So I'll use this bottom edge using my tape measure tool, hover up, type 4 feet, and let's say my window is going to be 4 feet wide. In every case, I'm basically launching tape measure, clicking the edge, hovering the direction, and typing the distance. What I'd like you to do is create a bit of a guideline window opening for yourself so that you have something that you can trace, okay? And that's basically what it is, ultimately, is a measuring and tracing tool. So once I have that guideline created, I can go ahead and use the rectangle command to draw a rectangle on my wall, and I'm going to actually push-pull until I go on face, or type the distance, 6, enter, so that I can create a little bit of a window opening hole for this house. And that's how it's done. Very, very useful. Now, what's important to note about the tape measure with the guidelines is when we don't want them anymore, we can either erase them using the eraser tool, or we can choose Edit, Delete Guides. Before I teach you the last command, which is the Follow Me tool, I would like to then just kind of show you the process that I work within, because this will really relate to your assessment for this course, in how I would draw a small little space. And the order that I've gone through in this lesson is the order that I use all the time when I draw anything in architecture or design. And that is to start with the floor, get the floor size correct, offset the walls to the correct width or distance that I'm offsetting, push-pull those walls into more of an accurate width if there's wider walls along the way, or if I didn't quite get the width of my room correct, I would push-pull my way into the accuracy on whatever the dimensions are. And sometimes I go ahead and paint it at that point. But after that, I would use my tape measure tool to begin to measure out some guidelines for myself so that I can create some door openings and things and windows that I can add later and use as a tracing tool for my rectangle command to create holes in the walls so that I can go ahead and add doors and windows. So that's my next process. Now with rotate, move, and scale and copy, you have what you need to bring windows into your space. So I'm going to go into my 3D warehouse and look for a window that I like. Just want to show this to you quickly. Feel free to pause or watch how this happens. And I'm going to do the same thing with a door. Say I really like this. This looks like my house. Say I really like this plain hollow core door here. So I'm going to put the door here. The process is this: when we're bringing in these objects into the openings that we've created, we simply need to launch our rotate tool. And if the door is facing the wrong way, I need the handle on the other side. We know how to scale it to a -1 to get it sort of in there correctly. I know how to move an object from a corner, which I'm going to do here. I'm going to get that corner of the object and I'm going to attach it to the corner of my opening. And then I'm going to launch my scale command again and kind of rescale the door while it's in place. You'll notice that it sort of snaps into place. It's like this beautiful thing. So scale, rotate, and move are really useful for getting these objects in place for us. Same thing here. I'll use move, get the corner, place it in the corner of the opening, use the scale command to scale it down, use the width of the scale command to increase its width. And that is the process for drawing a small little interior. And of course, at the end of it, I will delete my guides. Now, the final command today is the follow me command. And the follow me command can be useful for final aspects of your drawing like baseboard or trim or moldings. And it basically needs you to create a path and a face so that it will work. So I'm going to go ahead and get you to sort of do what I do. And that will be draw a line on red and green, and let's say red and green, okay? Just so that we know we're on axis. We have this like little path, let's say. And then at the end of that point, what we need is to create a face, a surface plane, that is perpendicular to the path. So I'm going to draw a line on blue because that's straight up, and then green, and then blue, and then green. You could do that using the rectangle tool if you like, but essentially I'd like everyone to take some time to place a two-dimensional face or plane, being really aware of your axis colors in order to draw a two-dimensional plane that is perpendicular to a path. The next thing I want you to do to that plane, just to make it fun, so let's have a little fun with it. Let's use our arc command maybe, I don't know, to make this shape a little bit unique. So let's say, okay, I'll do an arc there, and maybe I'll put an arc here. Really watch that those arcs are actually on the face of the object. And then maybe I'll do a little chop out with my pencil tool. And I'll use my eraser tool to get rid of any excess that I don't want. So I'm kind of creating a custom shape. And all I did is I used all the tools we already know how to use. I just made sure I was really careful with how I placed them, using my pencil, watching the colors, using the arc, and then using the eraser tool to customize that two-dimensional plane. All right, we're ready to launch the follow me command. So step 1 for follow me is to select the path. I'm going to window around all of those lines to select the path. The other way to select a variety of things in Sketchup is to hold down the Shift key when you select, just like we did for selecting materials. Okay, so shift is the only way to select two things at once. Make a little note of that. If you're ever trying to select two chairs, you're going to need to hold down the shift key to do that. So I selected all of those lines. Step 1 is complete. I have selected my path. Step number 2 is to go to Tools, Follow Me, and select it. Step number 3 is to select the two-dimensional plane that we created. Boom! And there it is. Wonderful use for baseboards. Do not do that until you are done your drawing, because there's so many edges and faces now with this Follow Me tool that it would be very hard to go in and edit it in any way. In fact, what I often do is I'll paint it first before I actually implement the Follow Me tool. Then I'll go through the process. Whoops, not offset. Not offset, Follow Me. Path, Tools, Follow Me, and then the plane. And that way I get it in the material that I want it in.